Hey guys, Terry Red here, and today we are going to be talking about how to create DOF configs for DOF Config tool so that you can create your own cool addressable LED effects or even normal DOF for tables for visual pinball or future pinball. These can be original tables or ROM-based tables, so it's a big topic. There's a ton of stuff to go through, but before you watch this video, I highly recommend you watch this video. It's basically taking you a tour through DOF Config Tool, and it will help as a good foundation before you get heavy into this. There's no way to avoid covering lots of material, so I'm going to go through the basics and then go through showing you what you need to do to add stuff for a DOF config, and I'm also going to go through showing you my tool, my DOF Config Creator Sheet. So we're going to be covering a lot of stuff, and I'm also going to go through the whole process of actually updating a table for addressable LEDs to show you how easy it is if you use my Creator Sheet. You don't even have to know anything about what all this ridiculousness is, all these crazy numbers and letters and everything else. We'll do it the easy way, but we got to start at the beginning. So I may break this up into more than one video, but if not, hang in there and we'll cover everything and we'll do some cool stuff to, learn how to add letters to the back. You could also do normal DOF, how to add stuff on the side matrix and the back matrix, how to do cool effects for any table. But we're not going through the programming of the tables. I want to make that clear. We're not going to be doing that. We're just talking about creating the actual effects and configurations to add to DOF config tool. That's what this video is all about. We're basically creating all this stuff right here. Okay, so lots of stuff to cover. So let's just start from the beginning here. So how do we create configs for DOF? Well, for that, you need a few things. First, the table, whether it's Visual Pinball, Future Pinball, Pinball FX3, or whatever program it is, because any program technically can work with DOF Config Tool, it just has to have support for it. It has to have DOF capability added to that program and also to the table. So not all Future Pinball tables will work with DOF. It has to have DOFLinx and DOF support. Not all Visual Pinball tables will work with DOF. They have to have DOF support added in. And for FX3, same thing. That has to be done by DDH through DOFLinx. So it has to be capable first. Then the table and game has to be in DOF Config Tools database, because that right here, this is all the games that DOF Config Tool has. So if the game is not even in there, well, then you can't create configs for it. Therefore, you can't have DOF for it. So you also need to have that. Now, luckily for arcade recreations, most of them are in there. For Future Pinball, a lot of the tables I already had added in there ahead of time. But any other brand new tables will have to be added after the fact before you can start even doing anything. So, all right, and you also need your actual DOF commands and parameters added to the tables config in DOF config tool, as I showed you here. So you need to actually have this stuff, because this is what tells all your toys on the left side here what to do. This is the toy. This is the command and the parameters of what happens with that toy and what is actually controlling it from the table. All right, so you also need a basic understanding of how an actual pinball game or cabinet works. Like you need to have a basic understanding of how switches, solenoids, flashers, lights, and other toys work in a pinball game. Kind of hard to add this stuff in if you don't know the basics of that, right? So those are the main things you're going to need to add DOF to a table. So what makes a table DOF capable? Well, it has to be able to trigger DOF commands. So we need the table to communicate with DOF to tell DOF, hey, I want this specific toy to do this specific command. So in the case of Visual Pinball, anything that is ROM based, or other words, it's emulated. It's an arcade pinball game that is emulated. The code of the game is emulated through PinMain. So anything in Visual Pinball that has that is basically already ready to go for DOF because the control code for all that is handled already in the ROM, and PinMain will output whatever those are to trigger DOF commands. So luckily, most of those ROM-based tables already have DOF feedback added. The configs and codes, all this stuff is added for most arcade tables already. So the standard DOF is already done for most tables. Addressable LEDs, however, that's a different story. We'll have to get more into that later. Now, for visual pinball tables that are EM based, electrical mechanical, or if they're an original table that does not emulate an arcade table like Stranger Things, Stranger Edition, those types of tables don't have any ROM for the code, so therefore all the controlling triggering commands for DOF will need to be added into the table script. So as an example, here is the script for Stranger Things, Stranger Edition, and you can see here, these are my DOF commands that I added in. So you can see it's a DOF command with the trigger number, and I put what the action is, and I put a description after the fact. So original tables, this has to be added in for every single action that you want to trigger a DOF light or a feedback or anything like that. PinMain, you don't do any of that in the table script. That's why arcade emulation for DOF is much, much easier. So, all right, so I just already showed you a few examples. So for a visual pinball table script, like I showed you on Stranger Things, you're going to see commands like this. So you're going to have your DOF command with the trigger number and the action, which there's 3 of them. You can have a pulse, which that's basically just a quick trigger to tell DOF, hey, I want you to do this action here. It's just a quick pulse to do the action. Your other option is to do turning the DOF command on, and it stays on. So, for example, this one for the start button here, if I gave that command and I said DOF on, that means this action is going to stay on, which means that in this case, the start button light is going to keep flashing on and off, and it'll stay that way until you issue another DOF command to turn it off. And that's the kind of control that has to be added to a visual pinball table in that respect. So that's why original tables are not quickly supported for DOF, because it's a ton of work, guys. I've done a good number myself, and let me tell you, it can be a fair amount of work depending on how involved you want to be. And you know me, I don't like doing things a simple way. I like lots of bling. So another example for visual pinball would be commands like this, which is one that does DOF but also supports surround sound feedback. So you can see here, we have our trigger number here and our action, and then the rest of this is all about, surround sound feedback, the sound effect file that's being used, the position of where the item is on the table. So you'll see those kind of commands also on a table like Stranger Things, Stranger Edition. And that particular table is a very good example. I updated the DOF and also added some of the SSF commands in as well. And it has addressable LEDs, normal DOF, SSF. So that one for an original visual pinball table is a fantastic example of how to do everything on there. So I recommend that one as a good reference. Now, future pinball tables do not have any ROM emulation at all whatsoever. So all future pinball tables, even if they're an arcade based table, there is no ROM or PinMain. So it's all original scripting, just like a visual pinball original table. It's exactly the same idea. So as a result, you need to also add similar type of commands into the table script for future pinball. Now, since future pinball is more restricted, it can't talk to DOF directly. Future pinball has to talk to DOFLinx, and then DOFLinx talks to DOF. DOFLinx is kind of like the communication gap, and it does the translating for everything we need. So in Future Pinball, you would also need a similar type of command, a DOFLinx DOF type command, which will either trigger / turn it on, or turn it on for a specific amount of time. That's something that DOFLinx can do versus DOF on Visual Pinball. It's actually very cool. You have way more control that way. So you can specify the amount of time it's turned on from DOFLinx, or you can turn it off. So similar concept. Now, to explain the difference here of why these were needed, because some people may be a little confused with DOFLinx, standard DOF devices like your solenoids, flashers, all those kind of things can be controlled directly from DOFLinx. You don't need DOF config tool whatsoever. That's what these kind of commands are for in the table script. So that means that it's standalone. You don't need to download any configs from DOF config tool. However, for addressable LEDs, that's a completely different story. You have to do, just like Visual Pinball, go through DOF config tool to get the configurations for the addressable LEDs. So that's where these commands come in. So this command here that I just highlighted is a DOF command. So a DOF command is what we use for addressable LEDs in Future Pinball to trigger our commands on DOF config tool. You'll load up, you'll see they're no different. But the difference here is that you also can use those same commands to trigger anything, any of these, just like you can with Visual Pinball. So you kind of have a choice, you know. So what I've normally done is I've normally done all the standards DOF stuff internally using DOFLinx native commands so that you don't need DOF config tool. And then I do the addressable LEDs. So that's the big difference between those. So, all right. So that's our first explanation. Pinball FX3 and FX2 are completely handled by DDH69. He adds the configs to his own DOFLinx stuff to do all the DOF. And then as far as addressable LEDs, he has all the commands taken care of. He puts the configs on DOF config tool just like all the other systems do. So you don't really have anything to do with those ones. There's not much you guys can do as far as that's concerned. So now we have to talk about the different types of DOF triggers. So what is a trigger? A trigger is basically, you know, it's a letter followed by a trigger number. It's basically, think of it as it's either the action of a table, or it's a device of a table, or an event. It depends. If it's an original table, like Stranger Things, Stranger Edition, you can have timed, controlled events for cool effects that, you know, are like during a movie event. You'll see that if you go to my, you know, you go to my webpage or my YouTube channel and watch. Where is it here? It's in there somewhere. Where were you? I know I had you in there somewhere. Stranger Things. Where were you? Oh, right here. Okay. Oh no, that's not it. Oh, right there. All right. So if you watch this one, you'll see lots of controlled DOF that has nothing to do with the table devices whatsoever. Whereas, you know, other triggers, it's all about controlling the table elements. So it could be a trigger for your flippers, a trigger for your slings, a trigger for your bumpers, a trigger for the rollover switches, a trigger for, you know, going through a ramp and there's a gate switch, or the auto plunger. It could be a trigger for a light that comes on or a light that goes off. Those are all different types of triggers. So in the case of a ROM-based Visual Pinball table, PinMame uses multiple triggers. They're based on the type of device that the table has. So for example, you have S-type triggers, and these would be your solenoids and flashers. So if you go on DOF config tool, you will see that's going to be like this kind of stuff here, like your flippers, you know, and your slings and your solenoids. You can see a lot of S triggers are used for that. So for LXX triggers, those are usually light inserts, buttons, button LEDs, like your start button or your launch button, or like table lamps. So, you know, if you go to, let's see if I can find, okay, so for example, that could be the insert lights here, or it could be different light bulbs on the tables. Sometimes it could be a flasher, but it's usually not. Flashers are usually Also an S number. It really depends on the manufacturer. They do things and label them a little differently. Now WXXX triggers are switches. So these could be for like rollovers, your gates, your actual button switches. It could be for any of those things. So like your rollovers here will have a switch. Ones up here, there's actually switches on your bumpers, switches on your slings, and switches for your targets, drop targets, spinner targets. All those are like switches. So you might have to do some, testing to figure out, which one is what you need, like a switch versus a solenoid for your sling, depending on the manufacturer and the table. So that's our main triggers that we're using. So it's important to understand the table issues the DOFLinx triggering command, the control command that tells it to turn on or off or pulse. So we need that from the table, and then the type of trigger used. And I actually forgot one more. But the type of trigger used will help determine what type of action or event it is. Now, in the case of everything else, whether it's Future Pinball, Visual Pinball, or FX3, if they do not emulate through PinMame, so that's going to be a Visual Pinball EM table. All EM tables are like that. Visual Pinball original table, like a Stranger Things, Stranger Edition, or any Future Pinball table, which is going to use the DOFLinx triggering commands I showed you, and Pinball FX3, all of these are using E triggers. So E triggers are basically everything that is not PinMame based. That's the easy way to think of it. So, all right, so now we move on to DOF Commands, the actual commands in DOF Config Tool, the heart and soul of everything we need to do in DOF. So these things here, these guys, all these lovely guys here. Oh my goodness, look at those guys. There's just so much stuff here, and most people come here and want to cry because they're like, what the hell is all this stuff? They want to change things. They want to make things the way they want so they can make the table look a certain way, or do cool lights or that kind of thing. Well, there's going to be a little bit of reading involved for the finer details, but I'm here to help with my DOF Config Creator Sheet that would do a lot of the stuff for you with the addressable LEDs. And for normal DOF, that's pretty simple, but we'll go through that later when I show you an example of how to do it. So as far as DOF commands, here is an example of a single DOF command. So you have your trigger in the front, a color, and maybe the parameters are going to be different depending on the toy or device or the effect. Now you can have one that may have a specific time, and then other parameters that are about the size and position and other stuff like that. So that's one single command. So if you only have one command, like this one up here for the start button, no problem. A trigger, a time, that it's going to blink, it's going to fade up, it's going to fade down. That's a fairly straightforward single one, right? Or it could just have a trigger and nothing else. To learn more about what all these details are, you're going to have to go to this page, which if you go to your port assignments here, it's got a link for that here. You click on that, it'll bring you here, and then this explains the trigger parameters, the basics for every DOF command, and then all the general parameters, which are also for every DOF command, depending on what kind of device it is. But then all these down here are all for addressable LEDs. So this page is extremely important if you want to understand what this stuff is actually doing. All right, so I'm not going to go through all that in this video. There's way too much information for that. So that's an example of one single DOF command. Now, if you want to have multiple DOF events or actions for a single toy. So if I want a whole bunch of different things on the table to make an RGB flasher go off, for example, or addressable LEDs, well, you may have to have multiple commands entered in here, not just one. So how do you do that? Well, then you have to separate them by a slash. And then they are continuous, one after another after another. So here's an example of, for the Transformers back effects, this is a fairly simple one in comparison to some of the other ones I would do. Here is one command. Then you got your then you have the slash here. It's hard for me to highlight that. You got the slash, and then you got another command, slash, another command, and on and on and on. These are all different events or devices triggering a toy on here. So as you can see, it can get pretty complicated when you have DOF toys, addressable LEDs, under cab lighting, and all of this stuff working together. And then you have to add in all the parameters to control it all. So you're like, holy crap, this is way in over my head. Well, you know what? I used to do it on a notepad. That's how I used to do all this stuff, was on a notepad. And it worked for the first couple I did, like ACDC LE, but you don't want to be doing that. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to show you eventually how to use this to do all that work for you. So you're just going to do things the simple way. It's going to organize it for you and then assemble everything together. Now, I know this looks like a lot, but you're going to do things the easy way in here. It's going to assemble it all for you, and then it's going to put it all down in the bottom here. And all you do is you copy from here. You'll copy your toy with all the commands assembled down here for you. You'll copy that, and you're going to just go into here, and then you'll just paste it into whatever toy you're going to use. So that's what we're getting at. That's what we're getting at here, okay? But we have to cover the basics for you guys to understand what the heck is going on, right? So now, addressable LEDs. These are very different than DOF toys, okay? So DOF toys are pretty straightforward. When I say DOF toys, I mean, where here? I'm talking about like the solenoids for your flippers, slings, and bumpers, the shaker motor, the blower fan, the gear motor, your RGB flasher bar, your 5 flashers, your strobe, your beacon, your standard under cab lighting, chimes, all the stuff that basically is not addressable LEDs. Those are pretty straightforward. And that's where you would read up on here for how to control that stuff. Like if you look, you'll see they're pretty straightforward, for each command. There's not too much involved with them compared to addressable LEDs, which are much more complicated. And so I'm going to explain the big difference between them. With addressable LEDs, you can have multiple effects, multiple toy types, all on the same addressable LED matrix. So I'm going to explain what the difference is. So, for example, I'll go back here again. For addressable LEDs, they work on a matrix type of arrangement. So in other words, you have your back matrix here, which can be 8 to 10 LEDs, LED strips, typically, depending on what you make yourself or what you buy. Some are pre-made. Some people like myself just did their own. And then you have a single strip on the side. But you need to understand, though, that the way DOF sees them, it sees them all the same. So in other words, see how this has 10 rows? Well, technically, DOF sees this one the same way. You're just telling it you only have one row when you configure it versus 10. But as far as how DOF handles the effects that you define and create, it handles them all the exact same way. The only difference is because you've configured it for one strip, it scales it down to one strip. So if you don't want to have this crazy back matrix, you can have a single one in the back, and then DOF will scale any of the effects that are made down to that one single strip. So if you understand that, that's a big help, because then when you do your effects, you understand that whatever you make will still work for anybody. So the three main DOF addressable LED devices are your back matrix, your left matrix, your right matrix, and undercab matrix. So that's a new RGB undercab complex MX. So anything designated as MX in DOF Config tool, you'll see down here, these guys are addressable LEDs. MX, 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 you'll see a whole bunch of them there. So what we do is, now I've talked about the combos before, the combo toys. Well, our combos toys for addressable LEDs are multiple different types of toys. So we have flashers, we have effects, we have browsing effects, and we have a strobe toy. All these toys are combined to the back matrix. All right, so you have your flashers, you have your effects, and you have your strobe, all on the back matrix. On the side, you have flashers and you have effects. Same for the other side. Undercab is basically on its own. It's just it's its own toy. It doesn't emulate anything. You can enter whatever you want for that. So to explain it a little better, so your back flashers are the back flashers toy for the back matrix is used to emulate 5 RGB flashers. So that's going to be these types here. So you're going to have 5 symbols that you've predefined yourself. Like I said in the other tool on this page, that's what you're defining here. And any DOF command you give based on the flashers toy, so the back flashers MX as an example, anything in this line here is emulating the RGB flashers on the back here. So that's the idea of what this is doing here. Now, for the side, the left and right matrix, you have the same thing. Now, most tables aren't making use of those by default. That's part of what I do is I add that kind of stuff. So, for example, transformers here, you can see there's an RGB flasher here, and that's what's going on down here. I'm emulating not just the flasher, but also the position of the flasher. So I don't like having, the flashers all back here just being like a normal light bar. I like using the side flashers to emulate exactly where they are in the table and then leave the back for effects. So I wanted to explain the difference. So you're going to have your flasher effects, and then you're going to have your flasher matrix and your effects matrix toy for the back one, the left, and the right. They're completely separate as far as the DOF Config tool is concerned, and you will add your effects to each one appropriately. We'll get into more of that when we actually create one. So now there is a strobe effect, strobe matrix that will also show on the back. So that's going to be this guy right here. So typically, what you would do is you would use the same entries to go in there. That would be the same as your normal strobe up here. And you'll see a lot of tables have that. Whatever you see here in the strobe is going to be recreated with the proper effect down here. That's typical, and that's normal. And that's usually how I do it as well. So that's a separate toy. So usually what you see with the strobes here, you'll see a little strobe effect down there. Now there is a beacon toy effect, but that's not actually used on any table. I'm not sure why that was, but don't use it because nothing makes use of it, and I don't think you have enough toys in your back matrix combo to make use of it anyway. So any beacon effects are rolled into the back effects. So back effects matrix, that's going to be for our animations, our effects, our explosions, our words, all that kind of stuff that, I would put on the back, like what, so any of this stuff, that's what that is here. Yeah. So these are the effects, as you can see here, right? All effects. Whereas what I showed you here, those are all just flashers. Same with here, you could have letter flashers as well. Like these are just emulating the normal flashers. 5 specific sizes and shapes as you've defined here. All right, so Pinball X back MX, that's just browsing effects that show up while browsing through Pinball X. The RGB undercab complex, that's basically mimicking your normal RGB undercab lighting. Usually, if there is anything in there, and most tables should have it in there now, you're going to see that. So this is usually just going to be mimicking what's in your normal undercab complex toy for any entries. But if you need to enter any stuff yourself, then you need to make sure, because they're addressable LEDs, they have to be done with the proper commands versus the normal undercab, because they are different, and that's what this page is all about. So let's see here. I think I got through all that. So yeah, I already talked about the 5 flasher emulation. I personally, when I do a table, like a ROM-based table for addressable LEDs, what I normally do is I take out what's been added in, because every table had these flashers emulated on the back matrix automatically. But you don't want to have both that going on and your crazy effects on the back. Like, like this is a future pinball, for example. Like, can you imagine having the RGB effects and all this going at the same time when things get crazy? See, like I have the normal lights up here, but I have separate stuff going on there, and you don't want to mix them. And the reason, what I'm saying is that, yeah, like, can you imagine all that stuff being mixed together? It would just be crazy. So that's why for me, when I update a table like I did for Transformers, for example, on Visual Pinball, I emulate the flashers on the sides exactly where they are on the table, and it works really good because those side strips work very well for that, and they'll instantly work the same way as your RGB. So that's what I do for that. It's just much easier, and then when I know the table's completely done, then I'll not use the back flasher commands anymore that we already had, and I talked about that in the other video as well. So, like I said, anything that's in the back flashers MX on a ROM-based table that's already there, I will make those work on the sides as they should be. And then I will no longer have anything on that back entry whatsoever for flashers. I'll only have stuff in the effects. The only exception to that was AC/DC, where I made the flashers into the letters of AC/DC, and in that particular table, it worked very well to keep those like that. But normally, you'll see on mine, like in Transformers. Let's see here. We'll do that. Let's look for Transformers. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So for Transformers, let's see here. Yep, CC back flashers matrix, nothing, because the left flashers matrix and where are you there? I know you're and the right have had emulated flashers to replace those correctly on the side. So most tables by default, you will not see good emulated flashers on the sides. That's part of what I do when I update things. So I wanted to clarify that because that's really important for how good a table can look. Like, here, I'll try playing this a little bit. So you can see, like, you can see how they're showing up for the gameplay and in a position, right? And that way, that leaves the back area, nicely opened up for any effects. So if there's anything else going on, now for certain things like bumpers and all that, I'll have my effects up here, right? But for the actual flashers that just light up, just like you can see right here, there's a few different ones here, and I'll have them go off exactly when they do on the table, and then that keeps this area clear for any effects or animations or anything else, or any targets or anything in the back area. You can have those show up with cool effects or letters or numbers or anything else. So I just wanted to clarify that for you guys, because that's a very important thing to understand when you're doing this stuff. So that all sounds complicated. Yes, it is, as I explained. Trying to do all this stuff is complicated. So I might wind up just splitting this off into a second video because it's a lot to take in. So I'm going to just go through the config creator sheet to show you what I have in there, and then we'll go through and actually update a table for addressable LEDs, a ROM-based table, because they're much easier. So, all right, so here is my sheet, my DOF config tool, my DOF config creator sheet. It's going to have a lot of stuff on it. When you guys download it and go to use it, the first tab here, this lookups, ignore that. You don't need anything on here. It's just for reference. Don't change it. Don't modify it, because these are needed on other parts of the rest of the sheet here. So the first one you'll see, here's a visual pinball template. So I know it's a lot to take in at first. We'll go through this afterward, but basically you're going to be entering only information underneath this red line here. So everything in here is where you enter information in. And then in the end, it's going to create your DOF configs over here. And then at the end, when you're all done, it's going to assemble all these DOF configs and put them on a single line for each toy where they're supposed to go, instead of you trying to keep track of all that stuff the hard way. And then that way it's ready to go. It's easy to come back here and change it. So if you want to use a similar config for another table, and then you just change up what you need to, you can change the color real quick, change the trigger real quick, use the exact same effect, and then that's it. It's very simple. So that's what this template's all about. You can see here I've got the standard stuff for like slingshots, bumpers, drain, outer rollovers, auto plunger, kickback, tilt warning, strobes, beacons, 5 RGB flashers if you want to use them, character flashers for like letters. Some of these are extras that you won't normally use, but they're there in case it's an original table. Whereas ROM-based tables may not use some of this stuff. Targets, like drop targets on the left side or the right side or on the back. Ramp effects. Words, so like jackpot, extra ball, ball one locked. These are ones that you're able to use, and just normal longer letters that have a lot, or longer words that have a lot more letters. So this is all addressable LED stuff in the top here for the top half, and then down here these are all DOF standard stuff. Now again, this is just a template. This is for you to basically use. You'll make a copy of this, and then you'll remove what you don't need, and then you'll just change up the trigger, the color, and or you can add extra stuff in here, different effects that I've already made for you guys. So I'm going to go through more of that, but I just wanted to show you the basic template. So we have one for visual pinball. We have one for future pinball. Now, they're both basically similar. The difference is future pinball, the triggers here are actually don't need to be changed because they're kind of a standard that I came up with. And I'll show you over here on this page. These are like the standardized triggers that we use for the normal devices. Whereas on visual pinball, they're all over the place. There is no standard. Every manufacturer is different and all that. So you can't really do that with visual pinball easily. Maybe with an original table you can, but there's not enough of them made. So no one's ever cared. And I'm the only one that seems to be doing most of them anyway. So now this sheet here, the MX effects. Now, if you've watched this video here, which was for DOFLinx effects, I showed you all the different effects you could use with that. Well, that's what this tab is for. It's the same effects that you can use, but the difference here is you're using this on a per table basis. You're able to just copy. Like if I wanted to use a specific effect, like a sparkly comet left or right here, I could just highlight this whole line, copy, and then go back to my template, and then I could, paste it in here or insert a new line, and then I can make use of that effect. So that's what this whole page is for. You've got explosions, electrical arcing effects. You've got symbols, animated symbols, laser blast, machine gun. Like just all sorts of predefined effects for you guys, so that you guys don't have to figure out what the heck to put in here for addressable LEDs, because it's a lot to take in. Like it's either or you can just read here and figure it out. So you're entering, you're getting all your standardized effects from here if you want to use them for addressable LEDs. That's why MX is here. All right, so that's what this sheet's for, and it explains everything on here. This sheet is for standardized DOF. They're just reference examples for like your buttons, solenoids, under cab lighting. They're just to give you an idea of what to use. Now, the 5 RGB flasher animations are different. That's for if you want to have your RGB flashers here do like an animated effect, like left to right of a color, right to left, center to outer. These are all predefined for you guys. So if you want to just, copy all of these, because they use the same trigger for the same event, right? The same action, you can then copy those and put them back into your template again. So you got your 2 templates that you can use for the different emulators, and then you got your addressable LEDs and your standard DOF to use. Now this one here, Pinball MX, again, it's kind of another examples sheet. You can just copy and paste any of these. There's like slingshot examples, bumper examples. A lot of these are similar to what you'll see on the template, but they're here if you want to copy and paste them anyway. Now this one here, the MX shapes and letters, these are these guys. So if you want to use characters like numbers or letters or miscellaneous characters to display on your back matrix, they're all on here. All right. Now you would use these. A variable and the character are the same thing. It's just one's an easier way to type to use it versus the other. That's all. That's the only difference between them. Because if you go into, for example, here, like these are all word effects for the back matrix. Like look at actually this one here. Look at all the stuff that's involved for entering that in, right? So I have right here shape letter N. So if I wanted to, change this begin to use different letters, then I would go into here and I would change the shape letter entries, and that's what these are for. So you can use these as a reference for making up your own characters. So that's what that's there for. And again, I showed you these are reserved triggers that are used for Future Pinball and Pinball FX3. It's just more of a standard that me and DDH69 created. Now this here is for DOFLinx DOF commands. Again, these are using the same standardized triggers for typical table events. Like your slingshots will always be, using these triggered values. Your bumpers will always be using these. This command is, the command that will load the ROM for all your effects. And then these are all standard ones. And these are, again, these are the commands that you use in the table script like I showed you here. All right. Now, again, remember, these are not ones you have to use. You could do your own custom ones for everything, for all your effects, for all your DOF. You want to do custom stuff, you can, but you're going to have to read up on here on understanding how to do it. And then I included my DOF examples for Stranger Things, Stranger Edition. So you could see this is the actual DOF I created for it using this sheet. So if you look here, you can see here's my addressable LEDs. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of effects on that table. So you can see there's a lot I did for that. So can you imagine me trying to keep track of all this stuff on a notepad? So it's so easy to just copy and paste from one reference sheet onto here and then changing up certain effects, right? Like once you have them all established, you kind of reuse a lot of the same stuff, right? So this is all just the addressable LEDs. And then now this is the normal DOF that I added to the table script as well, using all these triggers for everything. All right, so now it looks like a lot, but trust me, it's a lot easier using this. And when it's all done, I just copy and went to DOF and pasted it into whatever toy is on here. And that's the basics of what we're doing with this sheet. And now if I want to go back and update this or change anything, it's super easy. I just go to the trigger or the color, or if I have to change the command just to make it work a little differently, then I just go into here, make whatever change I have to, and then it all adds up. And I did the same thing. I included my Transformers example, which is only addressable LEDs. And as you can see, that's very small. In comparison to what I did for an original table, this is small, but very cool. We had lots of cool effects on that one. And we have the side flashers I was talking about. That's these guys here. To emulate the flashers on the left and right. But these are all like effects for everything else. And you can see the toys that I'm using, right? Back effects, left effects, right effects, but then left flashers and right flashers. So that's an easy way to do this stuff. Like, because trying to understand that with all this, forget about it. You're not going to be able to do it. All right. So, and then here's my future pinball example I have for you guys as well. We have Star Wars Death Star Assault. So fantastic. If you want to see that one, it's on my thing here somewhere. Where are we here? Yeah, it's where, yeah, right there. So watch that video, and then you can see. And same with Stranger Things, Stranger Edition. I showed you up here. If you want to see how those are going to look, watch those videos. But this is the Star Wars one, and this is the actual table here. The all my code that I added in there. So you can see a lot of this is all standardized DOFLinx, but a lot of the rest is all addressable LEDs. And you can see here, look, a lot of these commands are the standardized ones I showed you on the template, right? A lot of them are the same thing used again and again. All I had to do was change the trigger, the color. And in most cases, I didn't change the trigger for like the slings and all that. I use the same numbers all the time. But then I would change up the effect if needed. But a lot of them are standardized. So that way you guys can do some cool stuff and not have to worry about all my crazy custom stuff. That's up to you guys. If you guys want to learn how to do that, that's totally up to you. If you want to, but that's a specific to the table type of effect. And then look, it's all just a few lines to copy and paste when you're done. So, and that's it for those guys. So, okay, I know that's a lot to take in. I know it's a lot of info, and you're like, Jesus, Terry, you said this was supposed to be easy. It is easy in comparison to how you normally would have to do it. When we use this sheet, and I'll go through a full example, I'll do it from the start to mostly done, and I'll show you from beginning to end how I do it and how easy it can actually be. Specifically for an arcade table. For an original table, it's just as easy, but you got to program the table script, so that's a different story altogether. So yeah, so I know it's a long video, so I'll probably cut it here for now, and then that way I'll do the example separately, so that way you guys can see how to do it from beginning to end. So all right, so watch the other video, and then once you've gone through it a couple times, you'll be able to make your own very cool effects for any table you want, and you can do it through your custom config. And then if it's really good, then maybe you can upload, submit it for everyone else to use. So we'll go through all that in the next video. So thanks for watching, guys. I know it's a ton of information, but there's no way around it, guys. So hang in there. If you're interested in doing this stuff, the next one will make it much easier. So watch the next video, and then we'll be able to do some cool stuff. So see you in that one.